For example, anyone for whom the Bible is divine revelation and truth already has the answer to the question, why are there beings at all instead of nothing? Before it is even asked, beings, with the exception of God himself, are created by him. God himself is, as the uncreated creator. One who holds on to such faith as a basis can perhaps emulate and participate in the asking of our question in a certain way. But he cannot authentically question without giving himself up as a believer, with all the consequences of this step. He can act only as if, on the other hand, if such faith does not continually expose itself to the possibility of unfaith. It is not faith but a convenience. It becomes an agreement with oneself to adhere in the future to a doctrine as something that has somehow been handed down. This is neither having faith nor questioning, but indifference, which can then, perhaps even with keen interest, busy itself with everything, with faith as well as with questioning. Now, by referring to safety in faith as a special way of standing into the truth, we are not saying that citing the words of the Bible, in the beginning God created heaven and earth, etc., represents an answer to our question. Quite aside from whether this sentence of the Bible is true or untrue for faith, it can represent no answer at all to our question, because it has no relation to this question. It has no relation to it because it simply cannot come into such a relation. What is really asked in our question is, for faith, foolishness. Philosophy consists in such foolishness. A Christian philosophy is round square and a misunderstanding, to be sure. One can thoughtfully question and work through the world of Christian experience, that is, the world of faith, that is then the theology. Sorry, family. Only ages that really no longer believe in the true greatness of the task of theology arrive at the pernicious opinion that, through a supposed refurbishment with the help of philosophy, a theology can be gained or even replaced, and can be made more palatable to the need of the age. Philosophy for originally Christian faith is foolishness. Philosophizing means asking, why are there beings at all instead of nothing? Actually, asking this means venturing to exhaust the question thoroughly what is inexhaustible, and belongs to this question by unveiling what the question demands that we ask. Wherefore such a venture takes place, there is philosophy. If we now wanted to talk about philosophy, giving a report in order to say what it is in more detail, the beginning would be fruitless. But whoever engages in philosophy must know one thing. It can be stated briefly. Kind of sounds like Occam's razor, kind of narrowing it down to the most plain, concise explanation or questioning or stuff like that. That's kind of what he's getting at here. All essential questioning in philosophy necessarily remains untimely. And this is because philosophy either projects far beyond its own time, or else binds its time back to this time earlier in inceptive past. Emphasis on inceptive. Philosophizing always remains a kind of knowing that not only does not allow itself to be made timely, but, on the contrary, imposes its measure on the times. Interesting. That's a really interesting way to put that. Imposes its measures on the times. Philosophy is essentially untimely because it is one of those few things whose fate it remains never to be able to find an immediate resonance in their own time. So, what that means is the questions of the past still have not been answered today, or the same questions of the past are still being asked today. And never to be permitted to find such a resonance. Whenever this seemingly does take place, whenever a philosophy becomes fashion, either there is no actual philosophy, or else philosophy is misinterpreted and, according to some intentions, alien to it, misused for the needs of the day. Let me think. What's another good example of that is... let's just continue. Philosophy, then, is not a kind of knowledge that one could acquire directly, like vocational and technical expertise, and which, like economic and professional knowledge in general, one could apply directly and evaluate according to its usefulness in each case. But what is useless can nevertheless be a power in the rightful sense, that which has no immediate resonance, weight or claim. is the word, in everydayness can stand in innermost harmony with the authentic happening in the history of a people. It can even be its prelude. What is ultimately will have its own times. This holds for philosophy. Therefore, we cannot determine what the task of philosophy in itself and in general is, and what must accordingly be demanded of philosophy. I tend to disagree with that a little bit. I think you can say that philosophy is something that is the acquisition of wisdom and the love of wisdom itself, and the constant mental process of reasoning. That's what I would. If I was in this class, I'd raise my hand and say, "No, we can. We can definitely say what is to be demanded of philosophy." But that's just my take. Every stage and every inception of its unfolding carries within its own law. One can only say what philosophy cannot be and what it cannot achieve. We can say a lot more than just that, in my view. A question has been posed: why are there beings at all instead of nothing? We have claimed that this question is the first. We have explained in what sense it is meant as the first. Thus, we have not yet asked this question. Right away, we turned aside into a discussion of it. This procedure is necessary, for the asking of the question cannot be compared with what is customary. There is no gradual transition from the customary by which the question could slowly become more familiar. This is why it must be posed in advance, proposed, as it were. On the other hand, in this proposal of and talk about the question, we must not defer or even forget the questioning. We therefore conclude the preliminary remarks with this session's discussions. Okay, finally.